Hey, Michael here. And before we get into the episode, I just want to let you know that enrollment is now open for my flagship program, the 2026 Leadership Mindset Accelerator. If you're interested in significantly leveling up your leadership with this live 3-month course, stick around until after the episode and I'll tell you more about it. In the meantime, here's your show. Leadership can be difficult. In today's Q&A episode, we're going to talk about how to instill an ownership mindset in your whole team, as well as how to deal with basically jerks. Stay tuned. We got a lot for you.
Welcome to Leadership Mindset 2.0. Practical neuroscience and psychology to transform you from a tactical doer into a strategic leader. Here is your host, former social entrepreneur of the year and coach to some of the world's top executives, R. Michael Anderson.
Hello, leaders. Michael here, and welcome to our Friday Leadership Live. So if you're new to this is a Friday live session that I do answering questions and answers directly from leaders. And if you don't know already, there's the GLC, the Growth Leaders Collective, which is my private membership group. And this is real life leaders that send in questions that I'm answering on a Facebook Live right now, as well as we're recording it for the podcast. Now, what we have here is we have some questions about team dynamics. And so we're going to jump right in here because the first question is, how do I deal with someone who is insubordinate, oversteps, and clearly wants my job? They network well with people higher up than my boss, so I feel helpless. Yeah, I get this. This can be difficult. So this person is probably remarkably political. So you want to use a couple different techniques to manage this person. First of all, you want to find out what kind of personality type there is. So go back to the leadership styles that I have, reread that chapter in the book. But basically, there are 4 different leadership styles, and chances are they are a dominant commander or visionary influencer. So you got a couple different ways you can do things, because if they are insubordinate and oversteps and clearly want your job, doing this, they lack respect for you. And when people lack respect for you, oftentimes they've tested what they perceive as your power, and you've failed their test. They've challenged you and you haven't met their challenge. And if this is you and you think back about it, there's probably been times where they've been really assertive or aggressive, or they've said something and it's probably thrown you for a loop and you didn't stand up for yourself. So what you want to do is challenge them back, because that's how people like this respond to that. There's a personality type that is always trying to get ahead. And what they do is they see people as strong or weak. And if they're insubordinate to you, then they're weak. And then they're perceiving you as weak. This is a clue that you need to hold people more accountable and to set better boundaries. So if somebody is insubordinate to you, you call that out. And this is why it's hard to do a Q&A, because in a way I want to go into coaching, but I don't know what insubordinate means, or they overstep. So the next time they're insubordinate, you can say, hey, that's not appropriate. That's not professional. That's not okay that you talk to me like that, or you do that. And then you hold them to that. And that's probably really uncomfortable for you. But that's what you need to develop in your leadership. You need to really stand up for yourself. That is going to give you the respect of them, probably the respect of other people that may be lacking in what you're dealing with. And what you also want to do is make sure you're networking with your boss and you're networking with people higher up than you, because that is part of your job. You need to be strategic. And on a longer term deal with this person, once you get back into a respectful relationship with them, you can have an honest conversation of, if they want a promotion, you can actually help them with that, but they're not going to do that until you come to a mutual respect in your relationship. So great question. If you have follow-up questions on this, let me know, because we can go deeper into that. Next question. What is the best way to instill an ownership mindset in my team? Some still seem reluctant to make decisions on their own. Instead, they check in with me for confirmation on everything. Yes, I get this. This is something that comes up often. So the best way to instill an ownership mindset in your team is to be very open with them about what an ownership mindset is. So you want to have a teaching. You can go to my book, buy them a copy of my book, have everybody read the owner victim chapter, do a presentation on it, maybe have somebody else in your team do a presentation on it, whatever that is, maybe to have them do some exercises. So you really want to start it off with that. And then what would be a great exercise is to ask your team. So maybe this is a half an hour or an hour session with your team. You talk about what owner victim is, you break them into groups, and you have them define what ownership looks like in their role and as a team. Because part of them probably knows, but when they can define it, that's really powerful. And then when you do this, you can coach them into what, okay, well, if you take it to the next step, what does it look like, et cetera, and get really, really specific on it. You can also talk about what a victim mindset looks like and give some examples so that they understand and it's relevant and it's tangible to them. And then what you may potentially want to do is you can say, okay, for the next 3 months, 6 months, or a year, whatever it is, let's really hold ourselves accountable to moving into an ownership team. And you as a leader, when you do this, you have to be honest and vulnerable when you might have slipped into victimhood and how you're going to change. And it should be something recently that maybe you slipped into victimhood, because that really shows that you're leading by example. I'm going to give you an example of this from my own life. Work life. I know, and this is a group victimhood mindset. We were a Microsoft partner. My main company was a Microsoft partner. We resold ERP, Microsoft Dynamics, and we would constantly complain about Microsoft. Now, Microsoft's a big company. It was a really complex product. And I had a coach at the time, and she said, "Hey, I realize that everybody always complains about Microsoft." And I said, "Yeah, well, they don't give great support. They don't give great marketing, blah, 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 blah." She said, "Well, why don't you switch to another product to resell?" I said, "Well, Microsoft makes the best one out there." She said, "Oh, okay." She said, do you realize what kind of energy and what kind of mindset you're bringing in by doing all this complaining?" And I reflected on it and I realized she was absolutely right. It was just a lot of negativity. It was not taking ownership for things. 95% of our business was with this Microsoft product. And I realized it wasn't healthy. And I was driving that as much as anybody. So at our next all hands meeting, I stood up and I said, "You know what, everybody? I realized that I complain a lot about Microsoft. And look, I'm not saying Microsoft's perfect, but these are massively, massively complex products. It takes us a year to install these, sometimes 3 months to a year to install these products. Very, very complex. And as we all know, Microsoft is the best one on the market out there. And I don't like that I'm complaining all the time about the best product out there that's really paying us all of our salaries, et cetera, right? So I am going to choose not to complain about Microsoft anymore. And I want to see if everybody will join me. And everybody's like, "Yeah, we complain about them too." And they got it. They got it right away. They're like, "Yeah, this isn't the best thing, but we actually secretly love Microsoft. We're big in this Microsoft Dynamics product. We're big fans of it, deep down. We're all nerds, right?" And I said, "Okay, can we make this like a commitment?" And I said, "Look, I'm not going to complain. This was a bit of a collaborative decision. We said, okay, we're all not going to complain anymore, and we're all going to hold each other accountable." And I drove that. I said, "Look, I'm the number one person. If you see me complaining, I want you to pick me up on it." We all agreed. A couple days later, I complained about Microsoft because, we've been working for this for a long time. It was habit. Somebody really gently said, "Oh, Michael, you said you weren't going to complain about it." Because I'm the owner, the CEO. Of course, there's the power dynamic. And I'm like, "Thank you. I really appreciate that. I absolutely made a mistake. And I'm going to thank you for pointing that out so I can change my behavior." And we all started holding each other accountable for it. And we overcame that. And we started talking much more positively. We got rid of the complaining. We talked more positively about the software. It seems like our relationship with Microsoft got better. We got better support. We got better marketing. I don't know if it's because of that or not, but it just made everything in the office a bit better. But what was important about that is I called it out. I took full ownership on my own for myself, and then I asked if they wanted to join me. Now, you may or may not be able to do it exactly like that with your team, but that's what you want to do is you want to clarify what ownership looks like, where current victimhood looks like, and then set some parameters and accountability and get everybody on board with it. And then what you need to do is you need to hold them accountable. So for example, the question said, they check in with me for confirmation on everything. When they do that in the future, you want to coach them and remind them that they have the ability to make this decision on their own. And you could say, look, I'm not going to give you confirmation on this. Some things you do need to have confirmation on. So you could say, hey, that was good you came to me for that. But if it's not, you could say, I'm not going to give you confirmation or not. I want you to go do this. And again, you got to remind people it's okay if they make a mistake. You just want to make sure that they learn and they put thought into it. So that's how you put ownership into your team. Next question. How can I be a compassionate leader without being governed by other people's strong emotions? I need to balance caring for my staff with establishing boundaries and letting go of the fear of being disliked. Yes, you're absolutely right. Because, and I mentioned this on another podcast, I don't remember if you're going to be listening to it before or after this, but people want to be led. Your job is not to be liked. Your job is to be respected, and your job is to drive performance. Do you know who people like? People like leaders that are clear about their expectations and hold them accountable to that. So that's what you really need to do is you need to be really, really clear with people about what you expect of them from an attitude standpoint, from a performance standpoint, from a role standpoint. Make sure that they understand that, make sure that they can do that, make sure that they buy into that. And then when that goes off track, hold them accountable. And holding accountable doesn't have to be negative. Holding accountable can be something like, hey, don't forget, you said you're going to do this in this way. That's not negative. You're reminding them what you agreed on. So don't get caught in that trap. And you're saying without being governed by other people's strong emotions. Again, I don't know what that means, but I'm going to take a shot or two at that. So maybe people get upset. Maybe people get sad. First of all, you need to bring to the table a very neutral attitude. Emotions aren't necessarily bad, but emotions don't, when it comes to giving and receiving information, when it comes to making decisions, emotions, that's not the place for emotions. And when I talk about in the workplace, it's okay to be happy about stuff. It's okay to be excited about stuff. It's okay to even be frustrated about stuff, but you don't want them to get in the way. If people are overly emotional, they might be overworked. They might be in a position that they don't feel comfortable in. Sometimes strong emotions are because they have something going on at home. I always bring this up to leaders and they're always like, oh, no, that's not it. But, they could be having issues with their kids, their spouse. They could have substance abuse issues. They could have all sorts of different issues. You don't know all the stuff going on. But that's just you as a leader have to be the sort of the investigator around things like that. Get there, try to find out what it is. Each reason of why they are having strong emotions are going to be a different course of action. How do you deal with employees who are purposefully sabotaging and making false allegations about you? I feel like a colleague is trying to sabotage me after they missed out on my role. This is similar to the other one. What I would do is I would ask them, and I would bring it right in their face. Anytime you confront anybody, you need to be very specific. Hey, I noticed you did this, this, and this. That's not right. Why are you doing this? And I might even say that we both went for this role and I got this role. And if there's anything we need to discuss right now, let's get it out on the table. Part of leadership is saying the unsaid. And I know it can be uncomfortable, but the fact is, if there's something unsaid between two people or a group of people, it's going to get worse until it's addressed. And so your job as a leader is taking that out, putting it on the table and having it out. And that can be difficult. That can be uncomfortable, but that's your job. You signed up to be a leader. You're a leader. That is what you get paid for. You get paid for the uncomfortableness. So you need to address this, and you need to stand up for yourself. And even if they deny it, they're going to be more on guard and they're not going to do that. You need to stand up for yourself. Now, here's your challenge for this week, dear leader. Think about your team. Where is your team showing up as a victim? It could be an individual person, it could be a group of people, it could be the whole team. Now, how are you going to get them back on track? How can you identify it? How can you communicate it to them? How can you co-create what success looks like around this? And how can you hold them accountable? There is always one place every team is doing this. Now it's time for you to correct it. All right, that's it for today, everybody. Keep sending in your questions. I'll keep answering them. If you enjoyed today's episode, I have a time-sensitive invitation for you. We are currently enrolling for the 2026 cohort of the Leadership Mindset Accelerator starting February 24th. This is not a pre-recorded video course where you watch everything alone. This is a 3-month mentorship journey with me. With live classes every other week, plus accountability and mindset integration anchors, you will actively rewire your leadership mindset so that your self-worth, self-trust, and natural confidence rises to a higher level than you ever thought possible. If you're ready to see what heights as a leader you can reach with the right support, go to rmichaelanderson.com/mindset. That's rmichaelanderson.com/mindset, or check out the show notes. Don't let another year go by hoping things change. Join us in February. I'll see you there.